Ladies and gentlemen, your attention, please.
Hello, hello, hello.
Hello. How are you?
I am super excited to be doing this. I have to say, welcome to the Journeyman Unfiltered. And as people roll in, I'm just gonna, kind of be a fanboy here for a minute, Ellie.
Can I just say that that's one of the better intros that I've seen? That was fantastic.
Well, that is my daughter's work, and
Yeah, that was very well
she
done.
is, sort of the backstory on her. You know, art is not typically a direction you push your kid in,
Mhm.
get a degree and so on. But when she was about 10 or 11, she started doing videos like that, and I let her use my YouTube page one day, and it was never the same. She
Amazing.
uploaded a video, and 2 million views later.
Wow.
Yeah,
That's a
yeah.
skill.
I mean,
Yeah, I need people like that in my life.
our little kid
Mine's
was
terrible.
our little kid was paying the rent for a minute.
That is amazing.
So yeah. Ellie, thanks so much for making
I'm
time. I
so
know
glad to
you're,
be here.
as I said, your dance card is full. Why don't we do this? Because I am really interested to know how it is that you've got the skill set to be digging through the Epstein files with as much efficiency as you seem to
Mhm.
be doing.
You
I
know,
mean,
I
what
wonder sometimes. I wonder if I do have that skill set. I think like are people just telling me I have it or do I actually have it? I think it's a certain kind of brain. I don't think it's necessarily my educational training. I'm a classics major, so I studied Latin, so maybe that tells you something about the way my brain works.
okay.
But I'm kind of like this. I was a puzzle kid, I liked building and puzzling and solving and doing logic puzzles and things like that. And I think in some way my brain is really wired. I've talked a little bit about like photographic memory. I think there's probably a little bit of that in there where I can read a whole bunch of documents and a tiny little insignificant thing will pop up miles down the road and I'll remember having seen that before somewhere and then connecting those dots. So I think there's a little bit of that at play. I think it's maybe just diligence and just doing it and just reading it. And I'm a pretty big reader in general, and so I'm probably good at absorbing information a little bit, but there's also intent and passion behind what I'm doing because I think ultimately, people ask why do this? It's just that, I'm a mom. I've got 4 kids. I think about if anything like this had ever happened to them, I'd want people to passionately fight for their rights, and so that's what I think about. I don't want all these, you know, bad actors to go down for whatever money crimes they did. I want them to go down for the harming of children. Like I
For the
want that
real
to be
stuff.
for the real stuff. And I
Yeah.
want moving forward this to be a world where it doesn't matter if you have money and power. If you do something like this, you go down forever, and that's it. That just doesn't matter.
That's really to me been the biggest frustration, and not just about specifically the Epstein files, but just
Mhm.
sort of writ large. You see all of these things happening, and I guess naively before, say a decade ago, we thought when people behave this way, they would just go to jail.
Right,
Somebody would take care of it, and now
right,
we're, I think, realizing that we're the somebodies. If
right.
because I mean, I every day I see something. It's Christy Nome did this, Cash Patel did that, just
Mhm.
whatever, and nothing seems to happen. So it's got to
Nothing.
be frustrating to when you're looking at such a just a wealth of criminality.
Yeah.
and nothing, does that really ever just really
Yeah.
frustrate you?
It does really frustrate me. I mean, we have enough to convict a lot of people. Like, I know we're still digging, and I know we're still asking for more files, and I know people are looking for excitement or whatever in these files, but like, we already have it. We already have enough information to convict a very long list of people. And, in my other life, the work that I do, I have a small transcription company. And so I've spent a lot of time listening to interviews and kind of working on the sidelines of journalism. And in so doing, I listened to almost all the interviews that were involved in the Christine Blasey Ford case with Brett Kavanaugh,
Mhm.
in the Me Too stuff, in the Weinstein case. I very often listen to like local law enforcement cases that have to do with the abuses of women and children. Um, Normally, in these cases, when you have evidence, the people go down pretty fast and they go to jail and their reputations are ruined and they are a sex offender for life. Like, it's pretty cut and dry. But having, I was talking to my husband about this, like, thinking back, I listened to hundreds of interviews during Me Too that
Mm.
involved major players. I knew about what Trump was doing long before he was running for president and long before I knew about Epstein. I knew about the stories of the women that he had abused. And I knew about his MOs, and I knew about the things that he did, and along with a long list of men. And it strikes me that I never heard Jeffrey Epstein's name in that entire probably 2-year period of listening to interviews. Never once, never heard his name once. And that tells me a lot about what that level of money and power can get for you. And he was paying attention to Me Too. If you read all his emails, he knew what was going on, but he was scot-free. Everybody knew his reputation, everybody was still hanging out with him, and he was untouchable.
What's weird about Epstein, that, just the whole, I'm going to call it a phenomenon. When I was still working in New York, I used to run a trading desk, not a big concern, but, still lots of risk,
Right.
lots of stress.
Yes.
And, guys, 4 or 5 guys, we're just sitting there and we're doing our whatever, but you're always talking about stuff.
Right.
And I'm still in touch with several of those guys. And we were just talking the other day, me and this one guy, he mentioned Epstein. I mean, so I've been gone from New York for, I guess, a little over 10 years. So this was before that. So it would have been, I don't know, 2010 or something like that. And it was sort of like, there's this guy that's like got a book and he's got all these people in it, and he's basically got something on everybody. And it was just sort of like,
it's like a myth, like,
yeah,
it,
you know what,
yeah.
If you've ever seen, I'm a movie buff, so
Yeah.
I can tie anything in, or a movie into anything. But like in the Usual Suspects, this guy was like Kaiser Sose. I would hear, but never a name,
Never see
just that
him.
there
Nope.
was a guy that had all this money and he had shit on all these people. And lo and behold, this is, a decade and a half later, here we are.
Yeah. Yeah. I was watching Untouchables on Monday night, I think. Because I was also supposed to see Robert De Niro in DC, and then I missed it. I ended up missing him.
I'm
because
sorry, you were supposed to see him. What do you mean?
So
physically?
I went yes, he went. So I went to this thing called State of the
Tell
Swamp.
me you're a badass without saying
I
you're a
didn't. I didn't
badass.
see him. I
Okay.
did see him. No, you will realize very quickly that I'm not. So I went to this thing called State of the Swamp that was put out by Defiance.org. It was really lovely. It was a very Substack heavy event. So I got to see a lot of people that I normally talk to over a screen. And like Wajahat Ali was there, and Mehdi Hassan was there. And it really ended up being quite lovely, because like my former state senator was there, my former governor was there, and we all went out for drinks afterwards, which was something I never thought I would do. And so I totally forgot to stay and watch Robert De Niro speak, because I was out with my governor having a cider in a bar somewhere. Which was fine. But in preparation for maybe seeing Robert De Niro, I watched The Untouchables, because I don't think I'd seen it for a very long time. And I didn't want to sound like an idiot if I talked to him. So, but I also, it struck me, watching an Al Capone movie, which I know a bit about Al Capone. That wasn't the first time, and how similar he was to Epstein, and that idea of being untouchable and having power over every industry and every department in your city, and everybody knows who you are, and they're your friend, but they're not really your friend because you have something on them. And I was just like, man, that is so similar. This feels really, really parallel. And then just the idea of going down for tax evasion, and that all these
That's all
guys are
they
going to
could
go
get
down for
him on.
that's what's going to
Yeah.
happen again. All these guys are going to
Yeah.
go down for trade secrets. That's it.
Yeah.
But it did strike me. I was like, huh, this feels similar.
Yeah. It's really shameful, but even, I guess sort of taking that a step further, yeah, I guess you wish that you could get them on the real, the real nub of the
Mhm.
crime, but at least the UK and some of these other countries are doing
Mhm.
what we just, we're supposed to
Can't
be the
seem to figure
beacon
out.
of law and order,
Mhm.
right?
Right.
And we're not doing anything. I mean,
Yes.
we're
Well,
running away from it,
yeah, it worries me because I mean, we live very close to Teterboro Airport, which is where
right?
Epstein was arrested, right? And for a while, I was working at my son's school, and I'd stand out on the playground and I would just watch these Gulf streams just fly over every 2 to 4 minutes, these little private planes. And I thought, they're filled with the people on these lists. Like the people who have private planes at Teterboro airports, you would be hard pressed to not be connected to this story and somehow. And I think that's what we're seeing, is that everybody's on the list. Like when we think of a list, like everybody was on the list. And every time I would see those planes, I would think like, this is probably still happening somewhere. This
Oh, yeah.
probably isn't over. And that's what I think about when I think about people going down for money instead of the actual sex crimes, is that it'll continue then. Like nothing will be stopped. The kids won't be protected. There will be girls who are coming out of foster care and poverty somewhere down the line who will then be picked off again for these wealthy men who have islands and properties and all this stuff. And that's what I want to stop. I think that's why I do this, and why I'm working on this, and why I'm up really late, is like I want that part to stop, right? I want people to be afraid of the power of citizens and what we can find out about them, and how badly we can ruin their reputation, and make sure that this never happens again. I want there to be something there that they are left with so that this never happens again.
That's you make a really interesting point, and in that they know who to, it's almost like a wolf, in the wood. They're going for that weak link.
Yeah.
And without fail, at least, the bit that I know about, how the genesis of all this, it was always girls with broken families,
Mhm.
poor kids, you could wave $100 in front of, and it's like, wow.
Yeah.
And it's really hard for me to imagine. I mean, having a daughter, it's just difficult to think, like, I don't know, to sort of visualize what that encounter must have been like.
Mhm. Well,
And I can just see a 13-year-old girl thinking, "Oh my gosh, this is great." And then suddenly it's not. And
right.
there's almost no turning back from,
Right. Well, and I think when you come from poverty, I don't come from poverty, but I come from pretty meager background, both in my marriage and as a kid. And if somebody were to hand you $100 or $200 in your head, you know exactly what that pays for, right? You
Mhm.
know how much $2 can cover, whether that is, a certain amount of groceries, that is a certain percentage of your rent, that's your light bill. Like you in your
Oh yeah.
head, 200 means a specific thing. It's not just cash, you go put it in the bank. Like it means a specific thing that you don't have to think about that month. And so I think for a lot of these girls, like if they still had some sort of supervision or a family to go home to, that was paying for something that they depended on. um but because a question that I always had was like, a lot of these men who were abusing the girls went home and tucked their own kids into bed at night, right?
Mm.
And it's that idea of wealth, that extreme wealth gap, and then looking at these girls who come from broken homes and not being able to see them as human beings, but as an object, right? They don't see that they may have a 14-year-old girl at home, but they cannot see them as two of the same things, right? This is my child. This is just a means to an end. And it had greatly had to do with poverty and where they came from and what they looked like. And I think it's gross. I think it's just like it's a heinous thing that wealth does to people. I think it breaks them, and they cannot see equality in a human heart. Like they lose that ability.
You know, that's one of those things that I talk about a lot, is just the level of obscene wealth that, you know, that, I mean, the Gilded Age is starting to like look, you know, almost quaint, right? I mean, and I just, I think it's just really, you know, an interesting point that it's almost as though at a certain level, you know, there's no incremental happiness that goes with, I don't know, $10 million versus 5 million. I mean, you know, are you going to be like 5 million times happier if you've got that much more? No, not really. And so I think, as you said, when it gets to that level where, okay, Howard Lutnick, now, people that, you know, that know me on here know that I worked in New York, and the last trading desk that I ran was the minority owner was Cantor Fitzgerald, which is the company that Howard Lutnick was the CEO. And so I, you know, rubbed elbows with him on more than one occasion. Thankfully, we weren't running in the same circles, but yeah, I knew him, and you know, he comes off as kind of a sleazy guy with the, you know, greased hair and, you know, that, you know, slick back thing, and I mean, but still, he was a very successful guy. Now, I will tell you, a lot of people, way before Trump came along, a lot of people did not like this guy. So he just really struck me. I don't know. The guy that I'm seeing now is not the guy that I was around for, you know, 4 or 5 years. And it's just really puzzling to me. Like,
it's a lot of soul selling. You know what I mean? Like,
in a major way. Yeah.
In a major way. And I guess that's back to like the transcription work that I've done. I've heard so many people, in interviews, and then you turn the camera off and they're a completely different person. Tucker Carlson is one of those. It was a little shocking to me. Yes.
Tell me about that. I'm interested.
I mean, I listened to him, and I listened to Sean Hannity, and Sean Hannity, you know, for better, for worse, he is the exact same person when the camera is turned off. So, but Tucker Carlson was very strange because it was like a morally conflicting thing. Is when the camera was off, he became a normal person. And I was like, why am I gravitating towards this guy who sounds normal and I would totally talk to? And I remember the guy who was interviewing him, I called him afterwards and I said, what was that? That was uncomfortable. And he goes, it's weird, huh? It's weird that he's just like an act. It's just,
they can just flip it on and flip it off.
And he said, that's what you do when you sell your soul for money. You become a different person on camera, whether you agree with the things you're saying or not. That was the thing, is I didn't even think Tucker Carlson agreed with the things that he was saying, which was odd. That happens a lot. And you see that, you know, and all these people who in the past Ted Cruz have said terrible things about Donald Trump because he came after them. All of a sudden they're very close with him. And I will say, from reading way too many emails in these files, is nobody likes Donald Trump. Nobody is there for Donald Trump. Nobody's there because they're his friend. Nobody's there because they think he's smart or that he's good at his job. They're there because he is like he's like a statue in the middle of everything that allows them all to do the thing that they want to do. Like, he's just a figurehead. He's the village idiot. You hear that term all over the place in the files. He's the village idiot.
The
Like
village
they put him
idiot.
in, or like, yeah, like he just is like, he can't tie his own shoes, but people on TV know who he is. So they put him in here so that everybody else around him can do what they want to do with the government. So it's just like this weird, just mess. But in so doing, you see all these people who were like ardent Democrats or more left leaning, but had lots of money, had billions and billions of
Mm-hmm.
dollars, start to seep over into the right because it benefits them more. They didn't care about the politics, they didn't care about the morals, they didn't care about the policies that they supported. They just cared that all of a sudden now the administration benefits their pocketbook. And so
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to start to support this administration that I never would have before. And so even in Jeffrey Epstein was an ardent Democrat. He spent most of his money supporting Democrats. And you started to see him leaning into that like heavy Trump tech bro, that whole culture that was created in the last election, that where you're like, why are all these tech bros up here? Like they shouldn't be ardent Republicans. That doesn't make sense. But it all had to do with what made their billions of dollars grow the fastest, and it was him. And so they didn't care. They hated him. They thought he was an idiot, but they all supported what he was doing because it benefited them the most. And it was just a lot of soul selling. It was pretty terrible.
Just to your point, and it works both ways. I have written and talked about a guy named Jeff Yass, who is
Okay.
he's not a household name, but he is the co-founder of an investment firm in Philadelphia or Pennsylvania. Anyway, I think it's outside of Philly, Susquehanna, and it's one of the largest trading firms in the world. And he's the richest guy in Pennsylvania. Always a never Trumper. And then this go round, all of a sudden, he's inviting Trump to speak at the Club for Growth. And the next thing you know, Trump, who really is sort of the genesis for what was going on with TikTok from his first firm, or first term, rather, he was the one that sort of initiated the whole ban on TikTok. And then all of a sudden, he's on the other side of it.
Yep.
So, it's not hard to see what took place there. And then lo and behold, now you look at what's happened. You've got the Ellisons basically owning media.
Everything. Yeah.
And, they're, consequential in the TikTok, buyout or whatever you want to call it. And what's interesting is, that. What's interesting is Jeff Yass, as far as I can tell, he's part of that group. But he's also, and this is why he was interested in Trump, he invested, or through Susquehanna, invested in ByteDance, rather, which is the company that owns or did own, and I guess ByteDance still owns some
taking over CBS
portion.
and all that stuff, right? That had to do with Colbert leaving and everything.
ByteDance is the Chinese company that owned TikTok, and so Susquehanna had about a $30 billion stake. So he's literally on both sides of the trade. And so anyway, we digress.
I mean, you see it in places that feel surprising, but maybe shouldn't be. So you see it in like major newspapers that were either supposed to be unbiased or they were kind of left leaning. Like you think about the New York Times and you think about like these
the Washington Post,
Journal,
LA Times.
They were right. And it all starts to gravitate like a moth towards the flame. It's just money. And I don't blame the journalists who work there because they are working hard for not that much money. But it's the people at the top where you think of like universities, like, why are you all giving in? Academic institutions, you're supposed to know better, and you're all giving in. You're all giving him what he wants, money, whatever. And it feels surprising, but I think as we step back and get a bigger picture, it's not that surprising.
That's been one of the more disappointing things. I mean, guys like Jeff Bezos and, Meta, although, I look at those guys and I see people who are going to go where the money is, or the access, or the power or whatever. But when you think about like the law firms that just rolled over, and the universities just rolling
The
over. And
Supreme Court.
and you just kind of I don't know.
Yeah.
So I'm older than you. I'm going to take a wild guess. But I came up in I guess I could say came of age in the late 60s
Okay.
when just the opposite was happening,
Mhm.
right? So
Yeah.
I mean, I can remember first time I went to school with a white kid. That kind of stuff where there was all this progress that was happening and we were moving in this direction. And then we elected Barack Obama. And it's like the pendulum just went totally in
Interesting.
an opposite direction.
Yeah. Tell me more about that.
Well, it's I have compared it to I'm in North Carolina, so I'm just
Mhm.
down the road from Wilmington, which was the site of the Wilmington massacre. And, it's a story that more people are learning about. I didn't even know about it until I moved to North Carolina. But the interesting thing about it is that backlash,
Mhm.
and what really caused it was the fact that, this is actually after Reconstruction.
Yeah.
And, you had a period of time where Wilmington, believe it or not, was called the Black Mecca because
Mm.
you had all this influx of skilled craftsmen, people with,
Mm.
and so there was a point that Wilmington, I think, was close to 80% Black. It's like 13%
Interesting.
Black now. It was the
Wow.
largest city in the state of North Carolina.
Mhm.
And it's hard to believe now, looking back.
Yeah.
But, if you can think about it this way, it was a port city.
Mhm.
So we're talking the late 1800s. That was money. So the head
Yeah.
of the customs, bureau or whatever they called it was Black. Black newspapers, all this stuff. And then you
Mhm.
had this sort of cabal of rich white guys that just weren't having it.
Yeah.
And so the interesting part is that they didn't just target the Black citizenry. The reason all of this was happening was because um, Black Republicans at the time
Mhm.
and basically white farmers formed what they call a fusion movement, where
Mhm.
they realized that their interests were aligned and it was nothing to do with race, and that was the problem, and that set
Yeah.
everything off. And so anyway, the rest is history. What's interesting to me is that event happened in 1898, which is the same year my grandmother was born. If you just want to think about the
Mhm.
proximity of where we are
Yeah.
now
Oh,
to
yeah.
then, it's not like centuries ago.
Yeah. No. That's really fat. Well, I mean, I think people are always surprised when they hear about some of these bigger events during the civil rights era, and then they discover that the person's like 65 years old. And they're like, wait, hold on.
Right.
I thought that was in the history books. And it's like, no, this was not that long ago. Like this stuff recently happened. And the people who were fighting for it, that's a concern I have. I have people in my family who are very ardent pro-democracy protesters during civil rights and everything,
Mhm.
and they've so been broken down in the last 10 years to say, no, this is what it looks like to be anti-government. It's to go with Trump. And you just want to be like,
Wow.
objectively, can you not see what that looks like? That is not anti-government.
Boy.
Like and it's a lot of like, well, you don't know, we were there, we were protesting in the 60s, we went through this, so this is the right way now. And I just want to be like, but objectively, like that's the opposite of what you were doing before, and I don't understand. And you can't explain it to people because they just don't want to listen. But it is very interesting because I've seen more than a handful of people who participated in that and were ardent, supporters and protesters. And then when it came time to do it again, they were like, no, it's wrong. And I just want to
Wow.
know where that flip happened. I want to know, how do you flip like that? What convinces you? Or are we as a people so, is it a lesson in psychology that people are so convincible to believe something that they never would have before, and why?
I think part of it is just as a country collectively, we're not that smart. we 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 really are just not that smart. And
Yeah.
I mean, there are anomalies like
Yeah.
yourself. I mean, but do you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
The average, I can walk down the street and talk to neighbors of mine that are perfectly in appearance, nice people, would
Yeah.
do anything for you, and they vote for Trump. And I'm talking about
Yeah.
people that are yeah, ex-military, for example.
Yeah.
And I'm thinking to myself, well, do you not see what's happening with the VA? I mean,
Yeah.
how do you
They're
square
not.
that? No,
They're not.
they,
They're behind a huge filter where they just
yeah.
get a couple of things. Yeah.
And it's, and that's what kind of worries me about what's happening. We mentioned earlier just the whole thing with, Paramount now is going to end up owning Warner Discovery. So they're going to have, one of the, a venerable
Mhm.
studio. They've got
Right.
CBS. They'll have HBO. They'll have, uh, um, just basically more
Mhm.
than it's hard for me, having been in finance, and I started in the 80s. So we've gone from breaking up all of this to like this just massive
Mhm.
consolidation, which is bad enough on its own. But then you think about, I mean, this is Vladimir Putin kind of stuff,
Oh yeah. And this
right?
was planned.
It's like
Yeah.
we're going to give all this to our friends,
Yeah.
right? Now, I do think the weakness of it all is that we have the power to unsubscribe.
Yes.
We don't
That
have to have HBO. We don't have to have
yes.
Paramount Plus.
Right.
And so when I think, I hear people talk about, national strikes, which I'm not against. The more
Mhm.
protests, the better. But at the same time, I think for it to really hit home, it's got to be economic. You
Yeah.
know, that's what Trump responds to. I mean, you think
Right.
about Liberation Day, it was a great idea until the bond markets said, what the hell? And he
Right.
responds to that. I
Yeah.
mean, he's just that kind of guy. It's,
Yeah.
for better or worse, that's what he looks at. And so I think they can't make us watch CBS.
No. And
you know,
I also wonder if it's kind of a poor investment because the idea, I mean, at least on the journalism side, people aren't going to like Dish Network to get their news on NBC and CBS. Like, I mean, it's a very small group of people that is literally dying out because they're
mhm.
older, and people aren't going there for their news anymore. So, like, investing billions of dollars into it feels a little bit like a poor investment to me on their part, because I think those things are shrinking. I think
Mhm.
all legacy media is shrinking. As far as streaming, that's a tough one because people obviously still get their movies through streaming. We're not
Yeah.
getting those through independent means. I'm sure there's a lot of independent, filmmakers that have independent film launch sites, but they're definitely smaller than us wanting to watch Marvel or whatever it is. So I think that is still huge, and that is something to pay attention to because also then you have to worry about, like I was saying, this has been planned for a long time. I mean, sure probably one of the few people have done this, but like if you read the media chapter in Project 2025, they have a whole media section about what their plans are for national media. And it was this idea of getting rid of PBS and all these independent medias and all these objective platforms for news that were unbiased or close to the middle. They wanted to get rid of all of that, and they want to have state media like they have in other countries. And it's just like I just wanted to be like open it up and be like, guys, look at this. Please look at this because this is historical. We've done this before. This is this happened, 80 years ago. And in North Korea, they have to turn on the radio certain times a day and listen to propaganda. Like this is important, but this is I don't know if we will get that far, but that's what they want. Like that's the direction they want to go and why they want a monopolized media and why they want to have government media, and why they want to have one-sided political media. And their argument will be like, yeah, well, it's been one-sided on the other side for years and blah, 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 blah. But that was like independently run by private companies. They want it to be government run, and they want these companies to be private, but within the government. And so it's very, very different than anything we've had in the past. But it is one of the bigger plans that Trump has poured his heart and soul into Project 2025.
You know, the interesting thing about that and so many other things that they're doing is this. You know, nothing that Trump is doing is particularly popular. Even the things that were kind of like his go-to, you know, like immigration and tariffs, and none of it's popular, but they don't care. And so it, you know, just kind of taking a step back, the question is, why aren't they concerned about like losing elections? I mean, because if you look at what's going on right now in the Republican Party, none of it's really good for Republicans. You know, the things that Trump's doing. And so it's so obvious to me that the sort of the plan is, well, maybe that we'll have an election, but it'll be disrupted to the point that they can say, you know,
doesn't count.
Yeah, it doesn't count. You know, we're gonna have a do-over, or I mean, and maybe I'm just, you know, being a little over the top, but I just, when I see guys grabbing voter rolls from 4 years ago, I mean, he's not worried about the 2020 election. No, it's already happened. What's always interesting, and I never hear the you know, sort of legacy media ask this question, when, you know, and I watch a lot of financial news. You know, Bloomberg is as close to middle of the road, you know, just sort of you know, just the I guess real news reporting, if you want to call it that. And you know, and they'll have a Republican and a Democrat on, and those guys are so on message with, you know, election integrity and all of these buzz. And I never hear anybody ask them if, well, you won your election. Do you think it was rigged? I mean, you know, what do you think? What do you think? Democrats are like, we're like these arch villains that have the power to fix the election, but we let Trump win. What kind of sense? That makes no sense.
On the flip side of that, they've gaslit the Democrats to never audit their own elections, right? So if we don't win, we're going, we don't want to be like them. We don't want to be like 2020. We don't want to sound like we don't trust election integrity. So we're not going to dig into whether or not our election had integrity.
Ellie, I can understand the sort of line of thinking, I guess, but at the same time, I don't want to, you know, start sounding like a conspiracy theorist. All I'm saying is this. Okay. Yeah. The odds of a person winning every swing state by just like a margin that's, you know, less than 1% or something like that, just enough. It reminds me of, remember Scandal? Remember the show on television? It was like Kerry Washington. And there was this one season where it came out that they had fixed the election so their guy would win. And they went to some little town in the middle of, I don't know, Iowa or something, you know, and it almost feels like that. Now, of course, they had Elon Musk. They had Elon Musk and Trump. He's one of those guys that you really don't want to tell anything that you don't want anybody to know, because eventually he's going to start talking about it. And I just remember him with the whole, you'll never have to worry about voting again. I don't need you to do anything. And it was like he knew he had it in the bag, you know. And while we're on the conspiracy thing,
go for it.
He's the only guy that I've ever seen or heard of that got shot, and it didn't leave a mark. I mean, I'm just, look.
That is an amazing plastic surgeon who said he didn't need any surgery.
I had a leg injury. I fractured my leg 2 or 3 months ago. And with it came this leg wound. And when I walked in to, the guy that was treating it, he looked at it and he said, "Man, that looks like a gunshot wound." Well, I know what that looked like. And I'm just thinking
Yeah.
to myself, an AR-15 round
I
grazes
killed
my
somebody
ear.
behind you.
I'm supposed to have like some ear missing, right?
Yeah, you'd
And
have
so I'm going to
easier
just leave
to.
it there
I don't know.
because
Well,
there's nothing we can do about it. And that's the
yes.
frustration.
Well, and just the idea, what I always say about those things is like, all of us know the name of the guy who shot Ronald Reagan. Whether we were alive or not, his name is fairly familiar to us. But if we asked you to name any of the guy who shot
Wow.
Trump, can anybody name him?
Wow. No.
Right? No.
And even this guy who, a guy just got sentenced, I think, to life in
Yeah,
prison.
who was
The
hiding
guy
in the
that
bushes
was
at the golf course, trying to shoot him. Do we know his name? No, we do not.
collectively, they're the worst shots in the
Yeah,
world. I
well,
mean, are they not?
are
But
they? Well,
yeah.
so back to the election and like the conspiracy stuff. I was saying this yesterday. I had my first inkling of fascism and like, is this actually where we're going? When they started ripping up the voter mailboxes in my hometown. I remember driving around and they were
Oh,
pulling
okay.
them out of the ground. And I
Mhm.
thought, holy cow, like what? They're literally pulling mailboxes out of the ground and telling people that they cannot vote. And then they were arresting people for handing out water in lines at voting lines. Remember that?
Oh, yeah.
And then on the election day, I don't know if you remember this. I don't know if you were on Twitter after the election. The day after the election this last time, everybody collectively on Twitter lost a quarter of their followers the day after the election. Hundreds and thousands and thousands and thousands of followers just disappeared overnight. And all of us realized, and if you go back and you look at the analytics, it doesn't show that. It does not, it's nowhere in the graphs, doesn't show it, but every single person lost a quarter of their followers. And it was because there was some kind of bot surveillance, something is what people gathered. And then it all just disappeared overnight. And we're just like, hold on, what just happened? And after the amount of money that he donated for the election, and then he got the job in the White House, and then all those Twitter followers disappeared. The consensus was, okay, there was something going on, that, whatever happened with this election, Elon had a big part of the results. But then we were just moved on. We didn't ask, we didn't question it. We just moved on.
That's the part that really, you just gotta, I mean, if I were running for president and lost by such a small margin, I mean,
Right.
what's the harm? What's the harm in just saying, let's just check this shit out and make sure everything's on the up and up. But like you said, and that's the problem with Democrats. They want stability and, for everybody to behave according to Robert's Rules of Order. And that's not where we're at right now.
Mm-mm.
We're in a whole different ball game.
There's no rules. They're making rules. They're writing them every day.
Yeah. And it seems as though, and I say Democrats, what I'm talking about are sort of that, that inner circle of Democrats. Mm-hmm. And it's kind of distressing to me.
It's very distressing. Like, it just feels like we need to take a shower, wash everything off,
get some new people,
start fresh. Yes.
Well, yeah. And we've got, I call them athletes. I mean, we got some athletes, right?
Yes,
we just got them there on the bench. I mean, I had high hopes for Hakeem Jeffries, but I mean, you're up in that neck of the woods. Does he make it out of his primary, or is he?
He's not very popular right now. I'm not hearing very happy people. Yeah, no, he's not.
Who's running against him? Do you know?
I don't know.
Well, I just figured after Mamdani won, and did pretty well in Hakeem Jeffries' district, it's just right there for somebody. I think about. Remember Eric Cantor? And this guy was like, he wasn't Speaker of the House. What's the next thing? I guess Majority
Uh,
Leader,
yeah.
or no, in the House, it's something, whatever it is. I mean, he was like the second guy,
Yeah.
and he got primaried by some guy we don't even know who he is now, but it just came out of nowhere, and I just think the Democratic Party just needs a shakeup, a real shakeup.
They do. They absolutely do. They need youth. I mean, like, you can't have, they're younger, I would say, than the Republicans. The Republicans are very, very old. A lot of seat
They could be,
holders.
they're still
dying.
probably averaging in their 60s, and still.
Well, I was watching a video. They had some surveillance video of McConnell being walked out to his car the other day, and I just thought, what are we even doing? Like, what are we doing?
It's like at a certain level, the guy should be at home with his family.
Yeah, for
right?
fairness of his family and for fairness of the remainder of his days. Like, let him, quality over quantity.
I mean, I saw a similar, maybe the same thing, and it's like they're just holding them up.
Yeah.
To get him
like
to the
Weekend
car.
at Bernie's. You ever watch Weekend at Bernie's?
Yeah.
A little bit like that. I feel like that about Donald Trump sometimes. Like, it's just like, do they pump him full of like oxygenated blood, push him out on the stand, he gives a speech for 2 hours, and then he goes back and he just like collapses. Like, what, all these people, when we think about like our grandparents and the point when we take away the car keys, like this is a big car. They're driving America right now. We need to take away the keys from a lot of people.
They're driving us right off the cliff.
Right. But also the things that are important in the policies and technology and everything, you want people who are familiar with it and using it every day and understand it. And that's going to be younger people. Like, they're going to understand the actual things that are at stake within the US that are modern, that are happening right now, how to counter things, what to do with our military. You don't want somebody who's, stuck in their ways with what they used to do 50 years ago, because that doesn't apply now anymore. Like, we have to do something new. We have to be progressive, at least a little bit. And so I do like the idea of youth. I think that there should, I'm a big believer in term limits. But I also think that there should be, if we have an age limit on the younger end for running for president in some of these positions, we certainly should have an older age limit at the top end. Like, the idea of having 80-year-old presidents, running our country with health problems or whatever is not a good idea. It's just not, no matter if you agree with them or not. It's not good to have somebody who is more at risk running your country.
Yeah, it's my daughter said to me the other day, she said, Trump sounds like that guy at the end of the bar that he's just down there and he's been there all day and he's just saying silly, crazy shit. And the bartender's like, don't pay him any attention. Just, he's all right. You just leave him alone. Don't talk to him. I mean, because he's one of the more unintelligent people I've ever observed. He doesn't seem to really know a lot, but the things he thinks he knows, he won't stop talking about, tariffs. He's got totally wrong, but in his mind, and you just wonder, does he believe all of these things? You know what I mean? Because tariffs, it's like, it's a tax. We know what it is, but everybody knows it, but him.
Yeah. He's very, I think there's a lot of mental health issues with him. Obviously narcissism, but potentially like psychopathy or sociopathy, where he cannot empathize with other people. But there is also this sense that he's childlike, not in a good way, where he can't see more than a foot in front of his face. So if he tells us something that's clearly not true, he doesn't think that we can go out and discover that it's not true. He thinks he's like put one over on us and he can just move on. And it's like, no, we have Google now. We can just click and
he obviously only thinks there's one television channel.
Right. Right. So, he doesn't email, that's the unfortunate thing with these files is he's not an emailer. And so we don't have a lot of his letters going back and forth, but he's just very checked out of this world that we live in, that he doesn't realize that he can't just say anything and we won't know. Like anything that he comes to us and when he throws a stat, he's like, my polls, I'm 99% approval. It's like, that doesn't exist anywhere. Fine, show us, but he just doesn't think that we have the ability to vet anything that he says, and that's very childlike. Like kids do that, they say a lie, they run away. At least mine do.
No,
And
no,
then
it's not just your kids, believe me. It's been going on a long time because I was
and
doing
so
it too.
yes, and so that's just like that's an interesting. There's a lot of psychology going on with him that I don't necessarily think is associated with his age. I think there is some associated with his age, but I think just from like the beginning of who he is and how he was raised, and not being raised, that idea of not being tucked into bed at night by your parents and not being read to and not being told I love you, and how much that affects you as you grow if you're loved with a trust fund versus like actual family members that spend time with you. It's really damaging, and I think we see it a lot in every action that he takes. I've heard from multiple sources that he didn't know how to relate to his own children until they were 18 and could talk business with him. Like he just didn't know
Wow.
how to be a dad to them. And so he's got a lot of stuff going on, but it's just like, how do you take all that people were aware of in his circles and then make him the leader of the free world? Like, whose idea is that?
It's something. And honestly, if it were a movie script, nobody would have. I mean, now, yeah, it would be a documentary, but
Yeah,
but
I am not watching it.
unfortunately, but if you went to Hollywood 15 years
Yeah.
ago with this story, they throw you out of the room. And you know what's weird is when I first got to New York, it didn't take long to sort of understand that people didn't really think much of him.
Yeah.
I mean, this was in, I guess, early 2001. So, The Apprentice was still
Yeah.
on. And just the people that I knew that knew of him, or, that were in real estate, just kind of considered him a joke. And so
Yeah.
the idea that he's the president really sort of says something about us as a country. Twice.
Yeah.
I mean, president. So, yeah, I mean, we touched that hot stove and it burned our hand, and, we waited a few years and said, ooh, we want some more of that.
Yeah.
So.
Well, and I think it's that dangerous idea of putting somebody in office who's been on somebody's television screen for years, because there is also psychology behind that of people bonding, bonding with people on TV and thinking that they are like their family or that they know them, and so when you have someone that, if you have a no-name politician running for president versus someone who's been on your TV every night at 7:00, there's a very large swath of Americans who, might be of a certain age range or education level, who will say, I know that guy, I like that guy, I see them every night on TV. They won't care about policies. They just think that they know that guy. And I think that's very dangerous when you put celebrities in office, because they're more likely to do stuff like this.
It's so disappointing. So, Ellie, just in the few minutes that we've got left, let's circle back to the Epstein files. I mean, if we must. So today, I guess right now, Bill Clinton is testifying, and Hillary was yesterday. To me, that just, I don't know. I mean, it's just, to me, doesn't make Republicans. It's kind of all they've got, I guess.
Yeah.
Is to go, when all else fails, just go after the Clintons.
Yeah, they're the poster child. Yeah.
But at the same time, I mean, Bill Clinton is, there's some photos in there. Now, being from Arkansas, I would say this, and you may know differently. Bill Clinton certainly has a reputation as it relates to women. And, the thing with Bill, and, just when he was governor, I mean, it was sort of an open secret that he liked the ladies, but it tended to be women of color.
Interesting.
Yeah,
which there were none. If you look at all these pictures and you look at Epstein, not a lot of color. It's a lot of white people.
I mean, their predation inadvertently saved black women, I guess, huh? Because there's just quite a bit of
saved. I mean, I always say that the perfect example of that is Bill Cosby lived across the street from Jeffrey Epstein, and they weren't hanging out. That is how racist,
Bill
because
had his own
he had his own. So
situation
you would
going.
think that those two guys would be
But at
hanging
least the
out,
women were
Epstein,
grown, I mean,
Yeah,
not that
I
it was
know,
any better, but
I know.
yeah, when you
Thing with-
start talking about 13-year-old,
Oh,
that's
yeah.
just orders of magnitude
And
worse.
I've heard people even recently say that, it's because girls in New York City grow up faster.
Oh,
I've
no,
heard
no.
Alan Dershowitz say it's because 14-year-olds are more mature now than they used to be. So that should be the
But
age.
this is stuff that happened in the 90s. So
Yeah, I mean,
no.
to me, it does. I mean, I've got kids that age, and I'm just like, I don't know what you people are talking about. I don't know anybody who believes that. And as far as Bill Clinton goes, like, yes, he is the poster child that they will keep bringing up and over and over and over again. But like, I a long time ago wrote about, like, why are we still glorifying this person, right? He doesn't represent me as a Democrat. Like, I hoped yesterday that Hillary Clinton would go in there and, for the first time in her life, speak despite her husband, right? Stop letting the bus run over you. And if you know something, whatever, but like, don't say things for him, say things for yourself, right? I think she's protected him a lot, throughout. And of course, as history goes, people go after the women first, so people will blame her first, for the sins of her husband. But I don't know if Bill Clinton committed crimes in this case. I know there are pictures, but my concern is, as with nearly everybody in these files, is they were hanging out with a guy who was a known sex offender against children, who'd gone to jail for it, who liked to have young women around him that they didn't necessarily know their ages, but they just always, I hear from lots of people, I was there, I saw Epstein, he had young girls around him, they looked pretty young, but we didn't ask. Like, I've heard people say that several times. And it's just this idea of just standing by and saying nothing, or saying it wasn't my place, or I was uncomfortable, but I didn't say anything. And I think there are so many people who are in his social circles or involved themselves with Epstein, and Clinton included, who saw stuff going on and just didn't say anything, whether or not they acted on them. They stood by while girls kind of came in and out, and there were new girls every time, and they were aware of these things, and I blame them for that. I think there should be accountability for standing by and letting things happen, whether you actively participated or not, because he had a reputation that everybody knew about and thought was a joke. They just thought it was a joke and didn't care about it. And so they stood by. And so I blame people like Bill Clinton for just standing around or going on trips or being willing to hang out in social gatherings or be invited to people's houses, because I can only stand in my own shoes and know what I would do. But if, like, I knew somebody, I've known people in my life, in extended family, who had sex offender history against children, and I didn't go within 10 miles of them. My children never went near them. We did not go to social gatherings with them because I would not do that. Like, I find that inappropriate. I find it upsetting. And I feel like that's common sense, but it apparently wasn't for a lot of these guys.
It's, I guess I haven't had that experience, but I just, I would like to think that if I were in a situation, I can't think of, and I lived in New York or in the area, well over a decade. I never found myself in a situation like that. You've got to kind of, to me, you've got to be vetted as a person who will go along to even, it's like I heard Dave Chappelle making a similar joke about Diddy, that apparently he was too ugly to get invited to these crazy, these crazy.
You had to be in a very high-end Rolodex.
Yeah, and I guess I was too straight of a person, I would like to think, but and that's not to say that I didn't, go out and get wild and do whatever, but it wasn't that. That wasn't my idea of
You had to be in a certain circle. You had to make a certain amount of money. You had to have a certain amount of connections, and you had to be someone who, if he had something on you, that it mattered, right?
That's it.
You couldn't just
Yeah.
be anybody. You had to be somebody that if he got information on you or knew something about you or could blackmail you in any way, that people would really, really care about it.
Mhm.
And that was a certain elite set of people.
Yeah.
And that was his Rolodex. And wherever that Rolodex went, my guess is the Rolodex is just a euphemism for like, it's just his phone, right? Where's his phones? Where's
Yeah.
his, you know?
Well, it's one of the, one of the rare instances in my case, being a Black person who was not a millionaire kind of paid off
I know,
because
right?
I did
Being
not get
normal
invited
helps.
to the wild, crazy,
Yeah.
disgusting parties and whatnot. But Ellie, I know you've got another show, and I appreciate you, cutting out a little bit of time, and I'd love to do this again.
I'd love to do it again. This was fun. This is great.
Absolutely. And I don't know, maybe next time we have something a little more
Yes.
pleasant to talk about.
Yes, for sure. Love it.
Well,
Thank you for
folks,
inviting me.
if you're not following Ellie Leonard, you know what to do. And while you're at it, also follow the Journeyman as
Oh,
well.
Marlon, go do it.
And we will see you next time, and take care.
Bye. Thanks, Marlon. Bye, guys.
All righty. Bye-bye.